Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar today. What we're going to talk about is how to use interactive elements in your articles to maximize engagement. We are really excited to be sharing some of our thoughts on the topic of engagement with you. And we know that some of you may have experimented with using engaging formats within your articles, and some of you may have thought about it and didn't get a chance to do it yet. So we are going to share some thoughts about how to do it the best way. So before I really dive into the actual webinar, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Shahe Oren, and I'm the VP of Content at Playbuzz. I've been with the company since we launched the product at the end of 2013, and I am in the time in this company, I have worked with a lot of publishers who are using our platform, and really learned a lot about what works well with engaging formats in different types of articles and different verticals. So I'm very happy to share some of our conclusions with you today. Now, before we start, I want to remind you that you don't have to take notes on this webinar. We are going to send you all the resources that you need at the end of this webinar, the video, the slide deck, and a recap of everything that I'm going to discuss. But what I do recommend is that you think of questions that come up while I'm talking and write them down. So at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session, and I would love to answer all of your questions. Also, try to think how the things that we're mentioning here can apply to your business and to your day-to-day work. So if you have any question, please at the end in the Q&A session, share it with us on the chat box to your right, or you can always tweet your questions at us at Playbuzz Publish on Twitter. So what's on our agenda for today? We're going to talk about three main aspects that we think about when it comes to engagement. We're also going to talk about how do you plan a truly engaging item. And we're also going to talk about how engaging formats can be the whole item, or they can be an engaging element that you add into an article that enhances it and makes it a better experience. We're also going to discuss how to match the right format to the engagement that you want to create with your audience, and then look over some really great examples from the publishers that we work with. Now, for some of you who may be less familiar with the Playbuzz platform, I just want to mention that we offer digital content formats that are optimized for social consumption for mobile users, and they offer a snackable, visual, interactive, cross-platform experience that creates engagement. As you understand, that's our keyword for today. So the world that Playbuzz works in is a world that realize that the content consumption has really changed in the past few years. It's mobile, it's constantly disrupted, and it's consumed on social, and content is discovered on social. So some problems have arisen for publishers in this new era of content consumption. One is that homepage traffic is not what it used to be. It's not disappearing, but it's decreasing over the past few years. Also, users don't read articles all the way, and we've read research that says that 78% of your users will never ever reach the end of the article that you served them. Actually, a lot of them will not even scroll past the first screen. Also, as I mentioned, they discover content on social, and the younger your users are, the more content they discover on social versus, again, the homepage or search. And the digital consumers are always on the go. They check their phones 43 times a day. For me, it's maybe 43 times an hour. And they get text messages, they get calls. Their attention span is not focused on your content. And still, our goal is to get them engaged. So it's really interesting to see how, even though content consumption has changed so drastically, most stories on the internet are still told the way they were told a few decades ago. The way they were told when it was still print, when it was just ink and paper. So most stories on the internet still have a headline, they have text, and they have an image. While you can see in the example here an item about fascinating facts about Elvis, the way it's told in the textual way and the way it's told in an engaging, this is an example of the Playbuzz Flipcard format, And, I want to ask you, what do you think your users would be more engaged with? What would they like more? And which of these items would they remember more after consuming them? So the main difference for internet content and digital content from the way stories were told in the print era is engagement, especially when we're talking about consumption of content on mobile. Users can engage with the content, and I want to talk about three main aspects that we look at when we talk about user engagement with content. The first element that I want to mention is the emotional experience. Basically, it's setting the mood. It's the emotional experience that your user is going to go through while consuming this item. And this experience, whether the user is happy or sad or excited, or whichever experience you choose to give them, that might affect the way they're going to engage with this item. So here you can see, for example, a study from HBR that tested all the most viral items of 2013 and checked what emotions these items evoked. And you can see on the heat map that the most popular emotions in viral items in that year were anticipation and surprise. And those are actually two emotions that are very popular with engaging digital content formats, like quizzes, for example. They created an experience of anticipation to a result that surprises you. The next element that I want to talk about is the personalization, making your user a part of the content. And that aspect has two different elements that are part of it. The first one is creating content that feels personal to your user. And you can see here an example of a listicle that was created using the Playbuzz tool, 21 things that introvert in your life needs you to understand. And someone who defines themselves as an introvert will find this very personal and is more likely to share it with their friend. But also, if you create a quiz that gives the user a result, that's also a very personalized experience. But that's not the only aspect of personalization. Content digital formats like the ones that Playbuzz is offering makes the user an active participant in the content, meaning they're not just passively reading text. They're clicking, they're voting, they're thinking, they're answering questions. They're now an active part of the content. And the last aspect of engagement that I want to discuss is the call to action. What do you expect your user to do once they're finished consuming this content? Sometimes thinking about the engagement that you want to create, whether you expect your user to share, to like, to tweet, maybe to send this in to a friend in an email, thinking about the experience that you expect will help you plan to get the desired result. And this is basically where Playbuzz comes in. We offer different types of digital formats that are aimed for different types of engagement. And currently we have 7 formats that are live and available for all of our partners to use. But as you can see in the slide, we are constantly launching new formats, new experiences that will enable you to create new engagement forms with your audience. Now, when we talk about these engaging formats, we don't have to think about it as something that is replacing the articles or the way we're telling stories today. It can be something that is inside the story as we tell it today, that's enhancing it and making it more engaging and more exciting. So it's what we call the main dish versus side dish approach. And today I'm going to focus on the side dish of how you take a digital format and you enhance your stories with it. So a great example of that is the dress. I mean, this story was extremely viral a few months ago, and it's not just because the picture was so incredible and people couldn't believe that the colors that they're seeing on it are not the colors that everybody else is seeing. The fact that this article had a poll in it where people could vote, I'm seeing white and gold, and I hope that's what you're seeing because those are the right colors. That's not just that they could vote, they could see what other people voted for and say, wow, look, so thousands of people picked the other colors. So the experience became a lot more engaging very instantly. And that's maybe a big part of why this item became so viral. So when we think about creating engagement in your article, we like to call it the cake engagement method. And you can see that we were hungry while making this slide deck. Just like you wouldn't make a cake and then decide to sprinkle the sugar on top of the cake and expect the cake to be flavorful and sweet, you wouldn't want to create your item and then just shove the engaging element at the end of it and say, hey, let's see the magic happening. You need to plan the flavor of your cake or your item from the first moment of creating it. You want to bake your engagement in your item from the first moment and plan the experience that you want to create. And this way you'll get the best flavors and the best engagement in the content that you're serving to your audience. So now let's look at some classic formats that are perfect for in-article engagement, the side dish approach that I mentioned before. The first format that I want to discuss with you and show you some really great examples of is the Flipcards format. That's actually the newest format that we launched at Playbuzz. This is a format that's so simple that it's brilliant. You know, you have a picture, you click it, and it flips, and you see another picture or text. And it's a really great way to add drama and surprise into your article. And we actually checked how users are engaging with this format, and we see that in average, users flip 83% of every card they're presented with in the articles that they were exposed to. So you can see that this is a really great way to create engagement for your users with the content that you're serving them. Let's look at some really good examples of how Flipcards are being used by the Playbuzz partners. So the first example that I want to show you, and this is going to be a video simulation of the item, is from The Independent in the UK. They created an item about what your sleeping habits say about you and about your personality. So the item starts with some statistics, some information about the research, some text, but then at the end of the article, they added a series of flip cards with the different sleeping positions, and the user can basically click and flip the position that's relevant to them and see what it says about them. It's a really clever way of making an item that's more serious into something more personal. Now this is about me, and I'm more likely to want to share this with my friends. Another great example of use of the Flipcards format is from Fusion. They created a Flipcard item about Donald Trump quotes. They basically used 3 Flipcards with quotes on them, and they asked, did Donald Trump really say this or not? Now, after you flip all 3 cards, you basically understand that the answer is always yes. Donald Trump said all these 3 quotes, which basically tells you that the intention here was not to quiz the people or to challenge their knowledge. It was to prove a point. It was to prove that these crazy quotes are all real. And I think this is a really good, engaging way of proving this point. And the third example that I want to show you from Flipcards is from Entertainment Weekly. This is a really popular article of theirs where they exposed their new cover story with the Walking Dead stars. And they used the Flipcards format to click and flip and show the backside of the cover image. And while using one Flipcard, it's a 5-minute creation time, they made the article more fun, more surprising, and more engaging. So let's move on to the next format that I want to show you, and that is the ranked list. The ranked list is basically a way to democratize the listicle that we're all familiar with. You create a list of items, and you let your users rank upvote and downvote the ones that they care about or like more. So let's look at some examples of how this worked out well for some of our publishers. This is an example from the Sliced Pan in Ireland. And actually with ranked lists, what works really well is when you create a list that people really care about. And then they're going to vote and engage. And you can see that this website had their users voting on their favorite Irish accent. Because this was personal and they cared about what was going on in this listicle, you can see that the accents have thousands of votes. And that's a really good way to use this format if you want to create real engagement. Now, this example from CNBC is less personal than the previous example that I shared, But it's still a really good way of engaging your audience, because here when they pick which business leader would make a best US president, they might be influencing something that could happen in real life. Maybe one of these people will run for president one day. So this is something that's influential and interesting enough to get the users engaging. And you can see that here there are thousands of votes as well. The next format I want to discuss is the poll. The poll is the classic way to add engagement to your article. It's really, really good to use it when you're talking about a piece of content that has opposing opinions presented in it, that you think one user would not think the same thing after reading it as another user. So when you look for that controversial content and then you add a poll into your article, that's going to be a really good way to let your users have an outlet to voice their opinion and not just read the text and be left with the desire to say what they think. It's going to help them spend more time on the article and be a lot more emotionally involved. Let's look at some great examples of how that's done. So this one is from Distractify, and they created an article about New York fast food workers battling over the minimum wage. And they had the clever thought that people will have different opinions about this topic. So at the end of a long textual item, they added a poll that basically asked people what they think. And you can see that the poll has tens of thousands of votes, and the item was very popular and very engaging. The next example is from Time.com, and this one is something that was released right after the Republican presidential debate. And here they embedded a video that recaps the debate. And this is a really simple item. It's a video, a little bit of text, and a poll that lets the users vote on who they think won the debate. And you might be surprised or not to see that Donald Trump has over 60,000 votes on this poll. The next example is one that I really personally like, and this is from MLB.com. And what they did here is they let their users vote on who is their favorite vendor from Major League Baseball stadiums. And this article that you're seeing here is basically a recap of the whole voting process. And they show here how this little poll that they added was so engaging that official team Twitter accounts and other big figures shared this poll with their audience and asked them to vote for their favorite vendor. And you can see how with an item that takes 5 minutes to create, you can create a lot of buzz and a lot of engagement as long as it's something that people actually care about. And the last poll example I'm going to show you is from the Telegraph in the UK, and they actually took the poll format and they created not one poll but a series of polls. This is around the UK elections, and you can see that they embedded different polls into their article to create an even longer and more surprising, more engaging experience that really creates a new experience for their audience. The next format that I want to show you is the trivia format. And actually, when we talk about trivia, we usually think about a long item that's more of a main dish rather than a side dish, and something that challenges people to succeed in, right? We're thinking, how well do you know FC Barcelona, like you can see in the screenshot here? And that's something that users want to ace and then get a good score and share it with their friends. But trivia quizzes can have other purposes as well, like educating people on a subject, or creating a humorous experience, or proving a point, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. So the first example is again from the Telegraph in the UK, and I think this is a really clever use of the trivia format. They wrote an article about memory. It's based on a research, and they, instead of just writing text about this memory test that they wanted to tell their users about, they created a video that basically has images that are following each other. And after you look at the video and you read some of the text about this research, you have a trivia quiz that lets you test your own memory of the video that you've just seen. So you're not just passively reading about this new memory research, you're now part of the experiment. You're testing your own memory. And again, a really, really fun and clever way to engage your audience. The next trivia example is from the Huffington Post. And they created a 15-question item trivia quiz about the migrant crisis. And like I mentioned before, this is not the kind of quiz that you would expect your users to ace, to say, hey, I got 14 out of 15. I'm so proud. Maybe some of them will, but a lot of them, this is something that they're not necessarily familiar with. And the trivia quiz is a really, really clever way of helping them learn something new about this topic that is important, while reading text would be a much less effective way to get people engaging and remembering something about this topic. And the last trivia example that I want to share with you is again from time.com, and this is their Guess Who's Running for President trivia. This is actually a 20-something question quiz that presents different individuals and asks the user, is this person running for president or not? This, again, is not something that they created to help people show how they really know who's running for president. This is more of a way to prove a point that, hey, everyone's running for president these days. And again, using an engaging format here was a really, really clever way of proving that point, where in text it wouldn't have been as effective. Now, the last example that I want to show you is actually of a personality quiz. And a personality quiz is something that you don't usually expect to be an in-article engaging item, because it's a longer experience that usually users spend 2, 3, even 4 minutes on. But here you can see this article from Mashable that was published a couple of months ago about the new phenomenon of the yucky. And this is a long-form article. It was very influential and very viral and talked about. And they enhanced the experience of reading this article by adding a personality quiz to this that you can click to from the long-form article, and then check if you are this new yucky. And this basically provided a personal angle on this article, and was a really great engaging supplement to the long form that created another aspect of this experience for the users. So after we talked a lot about engagement and different formats, we get asked a lot, how do I match the right engagement, to the right format to the engagement that I want to get? So once you define the kind of engagement that you expect, we have recommendations for you on how to find the right format to create that engagement. So let's say that your expectation is to get a lot of shares, to have a high share rate on your item. So then you might want to use a quiz format like the trivia or personality and make it a whole item experience that people will get a personalized result for and want to share it if it's positive and it's flattering. But sharing is not the only engagement that we expect users to do when consuming our content. Maybe we expect them to comment, and then we can use a poll or a rank, or create a personality quiz that has a call to action in the result that tells you something like, tell us what you think about the result you just got in the comments. Or you may want to have your users spend more time on your page, and then you can add a poll or Flipcard or a gallery quiz that usually takes a little longer to solve, or a ranked list. Or maybe you want your users to vote and basically say what they think about the topic, and then you can use any voting format like the poll or the ranked list. And another thing you might want to consider is how much time you have when creating your engaging element. So we know that everyone has very stressed deadlines, and this is also something we get asked a lot. It's how much time is it going to take me to create my item? So you can decide how much time you want to spend creating your item, and also what level of impact you expect from this item that you created. So if you want to spend up to 20 minutes of creation time, you can take a poll, a one Flipkart, or a ranked list, which take less time to create. Or you can decide that you want to spend 1 hour to 3 hours creating the item and go for a long Flipkart listicle, regular listicle, or a full quiz, and then you can expect a higher impact, especially when we're talking about shares. So let's quickly summarize everything that we've discussed today. So we talked about thinking of engagement from the first moment of item creation. Remember the cake. we've discussed identifying the type of engagement you desire. If you know what you want your users to do, it will be much easier for you to plan how to get them on the road that you want them to go on. We also discussed determining the user experience, the emotion that you want them to have while consuming your content, which might have a drastic effect on how they're going to engage with this item. And we also discussed experimenting with different formats to get different results. And we really recommend that you try different types of content formats. And we're sure that you will have very creative ways of using them to get engaging experience for your audience. So thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to our thoughts and conclusions about engagement. Before we start the Q&A session, we welcome you to come to our publisher website, publishers.playbuzz.com, and where you can find all the information you need about using Playbuzz for your business. What you can also find on our publisher site is the Playbuzz blog, where you can read a lot of fascinating blog posts from Playbuzz team members or from industry leaders regarding playful formats and content engagement. Some additional tools that might be relevant to you are our forum at forum.playbuzz.com, where you can start any discussion that's relevant to you, or you can even paste your item in a thread and get some feedback from Playbuzz team members. And you can always email us any questions at publisherscommunity@playbuzz.com. We're happy to help you with any questions that come up.